Hello friends, welcome back for another part of our walkthrough of Oxygen Not Included's base game. Let's get back to where we were before, which is our volcano. You can see it's erupted a few times because this whole area down here has been turned from water into steam. It is just getting scooped up into these conveyor loaders as soon as possible. Our steel machinery is resisting that heat just fine, not overheating. Our water's been cooled down. I actually changed the temperature to about 15 C because it was doing such a good job keeping everything cool at this temperature. And you'll note that it does just sit on the rail until it cools down enough. So all of the heat from the copper is just going straight into the steam and powering the steam turbine. And you can see it's giving off about 530-ish watts right now of electricity. So pretty good. It was a little bit power negative for a while I cooled down the water, but this water will just basically keep the steam turbine cool. It'll keep the copper cool that comes out. And yeah, another thing I'm going to mention here is that because copper can be cooled so easily, probably a little bit of overkill on the rails in here after I've seen it go through a couple times. So if you need to, in order to save on metal, you can always rebuild this. You can crack it open and rebuild this to make it a little bit smaller. So if we were just to do something like that, I'm guessing it would still cool the copper down enough, and we'll find out here in just a second after we rebuild this. Metal ore really is something that's kind of hard to come by on most maps, so that's why I'd want to do it, and that's why I'm doing it here. The last thing we'd maybe want to do is, we could probably just keep this open, I guess. I want this to be about roomish temperature anyway, but if we just hang on and watch this, and we could actually just send a little bit through just for this time being. Let's say below 160, and we'll let it through just for a test. Then I'll just set it back to 150. Let's see how well it cools it before it gets out with only this many rails. Yeah, it's already cooled down to the degree that it needs to be, so you can see how much different it is because this copper cools down really fast, but the plastic, when it gets produced, it does not cool down quickly at all. So big difference in the temperature exchange between those materials. Alright, let's talk about a new build, what we're going to do here. This aqua tuner setup, along with the steam turbine, is very common for cooling water and cooling lots of other things. We're going to need a lot more of these over time. I think anywhere between like 8 and 10 in a base is pretty expected. So if that's the case, then we're going to need a lot more power to push this. We have our petroleum generators ready to go, and they'll turn on every once in a while because of the power drawing now. But once you hook up like 3 or 4 of these, they're going to draw a tremendous amount, and I want to make sure that we stay on top of our power consumption, because that's one way it can kind of spiral out of control. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start harvesting some geothermal power. The way we want to get this started is any debris that's in the way here, I definitely want my duplicants to sweep this up, but I don't want to start shipping it out yet. We'll talk about shipping it out here probably in the next video. This one's just going to be mostly about getting enough power, and I want to select a spot that's like, if you're in this oil biome, there'll be kind of these like peaks and valleys of the abyssalite. I want to stay somewhere that's like at one of the peaks, and I want to look at my temperature overlay and see where the hot abyssalite starts. I don't want to open up the rest of this to any hot abyssalite if I can help it. So I will want to build a layer of wolframite because it's going to be able to resist the temperature the best. Somewhere along here, that's going to be at least 1 tile away from all the red abyssalite. So the setup is going to, I'm going to kind of like mock it up here, and then we'll see different stages of it developing throughout this video. So let's say I built something like this. That's going to be the bottom layer of this. I'm going to prioritize this to be really low so my duplicants don't work on it. Next, I'm going to connect this up with some wolframite doors, maybe every other one like this. And the reason I want to do this is because I'm going to also put another layer of metal tiles on top of it. And the way this is going to work is, with these doors, if there's nothing else in here, like if this is just a vacuum, pretend this is like its own big room, which we'll start building out in a second. But pretend this is its own like big room. The only way the temperature is going to get exchanged between the top and the bottom is going to be if those doors are closed. So you can imagine that if you have this connected down into the... oh, I don't want these guys to build this yet. Set this to priority 3. I want him to clean up the map really quickly. And we need to pump all this oil out too, so there's going to be a little bit of setup work for this. But you can imagine that if you were to do something like this, once this is all vacuumed out and there's just nothing inside here except for just the doors that connect them, if I were to build down kind of like that, and then just build the tungsten down to also just start touching the lava, something like this maybe, then what would happen is these bottom tiles would get extremely hot because they would start getting all the temperature from this magma. But this area would only get hot if I wanted it to. So I could just open and close these doors just a little bit, heat up some steam, and use that steam to power my turbines like this. So that's going to be the idea behind this setup, and we'll go through a few different phases. The first phase that I need to do is going to be to clear the area of any debris that I don't want here. You want this to be entirely clean because I don't want anything else to get melted and start messing up the system. I also need to pump out the oil and kind of declare the spots that I want this to be. I'm going to make it kind of large. It doesn't necessarily need to be huge, but this is a lot of power that's represented down here, so I might as well take advantage of it. And it's going to be pretty cheap power too. It's going to take me a little while to build everything, but I want to get all of this stuff stabilized so that our power grid is more than ready to handle all of the stress we're going to put on it later in the game. So I'm going to just have my duplicates clean this up for a little bit. By the time we come back, I'll have this all cleaned up and kind of sectioned off, and we'll get to building it. Okay, made a little bit of progress here. We're mostly got everything pumped out, but I think we can start building now, and our duplicates are starting to idle, so we can get started. So like I was mentioning, we want to build it on the layer that is one away from where it's going to get super hot. So this layer is where I'm going to build all of the tungsten. So I'll build a layer that looks something like this. I will need to deconstruct all this stuff over here and get it out of here, so I don't want to cover it up quite yet, but at least we can start measuring to get everything placed to where we want it to be. Then mechanized airlocks are going to be separating these, and then one more row of tungsten at the top. As soon as the game loads, there we go. And I'm just going to do it all the way against that left edge. The right edge, I'm not sure how far over it's going to go. We need to leave a little bit of space for a liquid lock so our duplicates can get in here, because our duplicates are going to need to regularly dig down and expand sort of into the lava so that we can get more contact with the magma that's down there. Deconstruct all this. We don't need our power wires here anymore, so I'll start getting rid of the ones that are not needed. And we do want to sweep all the stuff out of here. This needs to be nice and clean when we're done. So let's grab our pipes out of here too. There we go. And we can sweep all this stuff up. On this side, we want to make a liquid lock entrance, and it's going to want to be on a similar level to this vacuum area, because that's probably where we're going to place our system to get everything out of here, our air pump. So our air pump is going to need to get all this air, all the air out of the... Man, I'm really struggling. All the gas out of here so that we can make this into a vacuum, which is definitely essential for this. So it looks like we can put a top on about here. Could have our liquid lock lead into this area. And then this tile could probably come all the way over here. Getting pretty close. Okay, this is kind of coming together a little bit. This liquid lock, I'm going to wait until everything is pumped out of here, and then we can mop it up. I do have a bottle emptier that's going to be sending our petroleum and crude oil to, so you can get rid of that there if you happen to sweep any up. There we go. So this will be about where our liquid lock's going to go. Then I'm going to make a few spaces or a few tiles tall up until we get onto... Or sorry, this is actually going to be igneous rock up here because we want it to be a separator between the steam, which is all going to go in this room, and the steam turbines that are going to generate energy for us. So we'll continue to build this out here. And you might notice this is going to hold a lot of steam turbines. You don't necessarily have to make this many if you don't want to, but, you know, the more I make, the more energy I'm going to get, so I might as well do that. I will want to wall all this side off, too. I want to dump all the oil that I'm going to be using into this one area so that I can pump it out. Now that we're finally done here, we can start deconstructing. So I'm just going to wall this off and build a ladder that's going to go down into our liquid lock. Once this is done pumping, we will be able to get this out. Got that done. And if we leave a little bit of space down here, that's totally fine. Not really that worried about it, so I'm just probably going to wall this off before we start touching the tile. So the tile's probably going to come up to maybe like right here, so I'll just wall it like right there. And as long as there's nothing solid touching it, except for like abyssalite, we should be good to go, and we won't be transferring that much energy between the two sides. Get rid of all these ladders that we don't really need anymore. As the game loads again. There we go. And we'll get rid of all this space because this is where our steam turbines are going to need to go. So steam turbines and everything else can probably sit up like this, maybe. Let's see. How much further do we want to go? We do need a little bit of space so our duplicates can get up here. So maybe we could do something like that. Or maybe even just one more down. Because we only need one space to vacuum everything out. We can also leave some space here while we do vacuum it out. And then we can get rid of those vacuums, or the air pumps afterward. So you can kind of see this coming together. This is where the water's going to go that we're going to boil and turn into steam. Up here is going to be where the steam turbines are, so we might as well start getting these ready. And we can make these out of any type of metal that we really want to. They should be totally fine. So I'm just going to start on this end. Let me delete these ladders really quick. I'm going to close this off because this is all... Well, I guess I'll just need to remember to close it off there. I don't want to close it off entirely right now. Okay, and then I'm going to build up like that. I'll just leave a... We probably will want to get in here and maintain this at some point, so I'm just going to do something like this. And then if we want to get down in here and maintain our steam turbines, we can just leave one ladder spot, and I will fully wall this off eventually. But all this area is going to be about where our steam turbines are going to go. Something like this. Can build some more ladders up. There. Now we can probably put our steam turbines down. Like I mentioned, you don't have to make this many, but we have the metal. We'll be able to cool all this. We should be totally fine, so I'm not that worried. Let me see. We will want to make... Yeah, I'm trying to think about how we're going to do this. We'll probably want some self-cooling stuff down here as well. So I'm going to put the aqua tuners down here also. And I'm going to put two of them. I'm going to actually build it in a way that the one leads into the other. So something like this. I'm going to have this... I probably want to build this out of ceramic, actually. Let me cancel this. Ceramic. There we go. Something like this. And then I will want one tank of water that's going to be in here. Also, we will want to do the same thing we do normally where we overpressurize this to help it exchange temperatures with everything else. But if I can keep this cool enough, this is a lot of turbines, 6 of them. That should be fine. Yeah, so we will need something to cool this. So what I usually will do is set up something like this. I will have a sensor on the tile before this, and if it's too hot, like if the liquid in here is too hot, I'll send it down, I'll pump it into the aqua tuners, it'll come back up and reevaluate to see if it's still too hot. It usually won't be, which means it'll go into the tank, and then it will come back out of the tank and kind of wrap itself around here to keep all these things cool. So this should be good enough for this. These 2 aqua tuners should be enough to push this. So we've got to wait a little bit for everything else to get set up, and this build's going to take a little bit longer. So let me fast forward to the point that we are ready to start turning everything on. I'll get this thing filled up with oil, which we can use just as our liquid lock right now. Deconstruct all this. Yeah, let me flesh this out a little bit more, and I'll come back with the last part. Okie dokie. This video might run a little bit long, but here it is, fast forwarded. This is the general idea. We'll go through this in pieces. But basically, I'm going to want to vacuum out the bottom of this, so I have a whole bunch of pumps running here. This is probably overkill. I just didn't want to wait because I want to get this done faster for the video. We also need to pump out this area too before we seal it, but we need to make sure that we can send water here. So I am sending clean water down this pipe as soon as it gets built. And then I'm also going to be sending polluted water down. This is looking pretty crazy for all these different lines, but this polluted water is going to be to fill up the tank that's going to be cooling things, and the regular water is just going to be used for the steam. Let's see. Do we really want to go this way? Yeah, I guess so. I don't like this. Alright. Get our polluted water in here. You also want to be careful because if this area does get too warm, which it will eventually, this can start boiling the water in your pipes. So be careful to make this out of insulated pipe as much as you can. And also don't let it sit if you can help it. Here we go, getting our polluted water line down here. The regular water line should be done in a second. I think it's already flowing, so that'll start filling up this bottom area. Now, we need to set up some automation here to decide when we are wanting to get more heat from this bottom area or not. So I'm going to set up a couple things that will hook up a little bit later. But making this out of tungsten once again, just because it can resist the most heat. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I'm just going to place a thermosensor. Sure. I'm also going to place a timer sensor. Again, this needs to be tungsten because this could get very hot if we're not careful. I don't want to make it out of lead and melt it and ruin everything and have to, like, go back in here with a different water lock. You always can, but that's obviously kind of annoying to have to deal with. Okay, and then an AND gate is what I'm going to want here. Let me see. Is this right? No, I want an OR gate here. The OR gate is going to be saying, what are the conditions for me keeping the doors open? This is weird because you have to think about it backwards. Basically, I want the doors to close whenever I want more heat in the steam. So that's what we're going to set this up for. We're all vacuumed out in here, so let's go ahead and get rid of these pumps. We will still need to get rid of all the material in here, so I'll come back and sweep. But at least we'll be able to start setting up our layers of wolframite and tungsten and the doors and all that fun stuff. Let's get rid of all this now that we don't need it anymore. You can see why this is such a complicated setup. You have to do it in multiple phases. It's not horrible, but it can look like a lot at first, which is why I like to do these videos and kind of walk through it. We'll get the rest of this stuff in a bit. Start sweeping out all these. My duplicants just can't reach that, but I'll build some wolframite, or rather tungsten tiles for them to get up there and do that. Alright, and these pipes, sure, I guess we'll just go straight up. But I don't want to turn these on until it's time, so I need to put these on a switch. Again, tungsten once again. Make sure I'm building all this out of the right material. So we have these out of steel, these pipes, or rather these pumps out of steel. Should be good. Everything else should be out of steel or wolframite or tungsten. So that looks like it's good to go. Get all this stuff swept. Once we do get it all swept, we can start building the bottom. But what we want to do first is we want to create an automation wire that goes all the way along the bottom row. This is going to be 2 rows tall. The bottom row, I want it to be covered with 1 line of tungsten all the way down. And that is going to be so that we can manually override... Well, part of this is going to be manually overriding that we'll set up here. So if I ever need to come in here and do any maintenance or anything like that, I can just turn it on with a switch. And then the other half of this OR gate that I have going on is going to be connected to the output of this one. We'll get the settings on here in just a second, but the whole idea is there can be 3 different sources that could open these doors. One's going to be if it's too hot. One's going to just be on a timer to flip it back and forth, only because if you keep it closed for too long, it could heat up your steam way more than you want it to. So we want a timer sensor there to act a little bit as like a buffer so that we don't overheat our steam. And the third one is obviously this switch. So this switch is going to let us open it up if we need to go build further down into the magma with our wolframite tiles. Or tungsten, whatever. I don't know why the base form is called tungsten and why the other one is called wolframite. I don't really get it. But yeah, again, I can't overstress how important it is to make sure that this is a vacuum. This absolutely needs to be a vacuum so that the only thing that is transferring any temperature from the top to the bottom tiles is your doors. You can also go the extra mile over here and make sure all of your walls are made out of ceramic if you are making it right now. I don't want that to leak. It might. I'll wait until this is built, and then I'll replace that one. So yeah, those are the only reasons that we want things to be exchanging temperatures. So with these mechanized airlocks, you can kind of just do every other one like this. This will give you space to expand further down, and it won't waste too much material. It's definitely better than doing it on every single one, so that'll definitely be... You don't want to like go overboard and do every single one. It's just a waste of material. So, for this, I want those doors to open if this steam is above, like, I don't know, 175. Something like that. I don't remember the exact number. It's somewhere between, like, 170 and 180. I don't want these duplicates to get trapped down here either, so I'm trying to move them out of the way so they don't do that. There we go. Get out of the way. If they do get trapped, I'll just have to unbuild a couple tiles, but it is just a waste of time. There we go. They can almost, like, not even reach the bottom anymore. And then as they build these doors, if you already have your switch flipped to be open, then it will open them up. So yeah, the thermosensor, somewhere above 175. This one's probably fine to leave on 1010. This will make it so that the doors close for 10 seconds and open for 10 seconds. But most of the time is them actually doing the action of opening and closing. So that's just a precaution, just to make sure that we don't overheat in there. I also need to hook these up to power. And I can use copper in here. I'm not expecting the steam to get that hot, but if I was being more diligent, I'd probably do it out of tungsten. But, you know, the intrusive thoughts have to win sometimes. Let's get our water flowing in here, too. We should be ready. Yeah, so regular water coming in here. Let's get our polluted water connected up as well. So polluted water should be waiting. Yep. We're just going to connect it to this system here, just enough to fill up this and just have a little bit left over in our tanks. Then we're going to seal this off. I'm going to stop sending polluted water down here. I'm probably just going to cut the system off at this bridge so that I don't leak anything when we disconnect it. So there we go. The setup for this cooling, like I alluded to, the piping is very particular. When you're coming in from this one, you can see that it hops over the pipes that have to be there for the steam turbine so that the hot water can go back down into the steamy area. This will be ending with a bridge that goes like that. The next tile over, I'm going to put a thermosensor. And if this thermosensor is going to be going, it's going to be sending polluted water through two of these things. So we need to see where polluted water is going to freeze and make sure that we do it just above that. Looks like it's going to freeze at -20. So if this is above, like, let's say 5, is that enough? No, that's not enough. Let's say if it's above, like, 8 or 10 degrees Celsius or something like that. We're going to go down here and cool it. It's going to get cooled twice, which is how I have this hook set, have this set up. So if it's above 10 degrees Celsius, I actually don't want to do this right now. Let me do this below for right now, and I'll swap it back because I don't want these running until I have this all vacuumed out. But if it is, oh no, we'll mess up these settings for the time being. This is exactly what happens if you do too much. Oh no. Alright, we'll get rid of this, but the idea is it's going to go through these two aqua tuners, which is going to lower the temperature effectively by 28°C. So somewhere around, I need to get them to stop mopping this. Somewhere around, let's say 8 to 10 Celsius, I can set that to. This is already getting pretty full, so I could probably disconnect it. Let's disconnect it here. If you disconnect it at a bridge, that'll make it so that water won't fall out of the pipe when you stop it. So as soon as we get that disconnected, it will stop flowing, and we should be good. But then the path from there, man, this is really getting annoying. Deconstruct the pipe, hurry up. There we go. Now that it's all deconstructed, we can just connect them back up like this, so that the out on this container is just going to loop all the way back around and just feed this and go either down this pipe to get cooled, and then it'll come back up once it's been cooled and kind of be reevaluated. So just going to create a loop of polluted water here, and eventually this whole thing will close up and not have this big gap of empty pipe in between. once our aqua tuners turn on. So once I get that stuff set up, it'll be good to go. I also have some pipes in here, or rather some gas pumps in here to pump out any excess air, and I don't think that we need this open for any reason at all. The amount of water that you want to put in here doesn't matter that much. I tend to like things more dense, so I will probably want it around, I don't know, 350 or 400 kilograms. Oh, what did you do? Yeah. Lindsay, why? Why do you do this? Also left some metal down here, but I don't really care. Alright, so what we can do in the meantime while we're waiting for this to fill up, like I mentioned, this is going to be kind of a long video because this is a pretty big build. We can deconstruct a handful of places like this, and these are just going to be the points that we lead down into the lava. This is probably overkill for what it's worth. You don't necessarily need to do this many, but if you've been refining a lot of wolframite, this will help kind of balance it out on either side. I'm going to also build my ladders down out of obsidian, and I'm just going to draw this down until it basically meets the lava. I don't want to dive super deep into there. I just want to get to the point where it starts to touch it, like that. And I will expand this down in these handful of places. I'm not going to do one right here. Let's just do 4. Just expand it down like this, go up until it touches it, and then stop. One here. That. The obsidian, by the way, is just because it has a really high melting temperature, so it'll melt at a higher temperature than the lava itself, so we should be fine. And then that. So something like this. And again, keep this switch flipped so that these doors don't close. Otherwise, you're going to close the doors and heat up all the water before you mean to. I'm going to pump out all the excess gas from here. Can seal off this area too, like that. And if I need to get back in here, I can just open it back up. It won't be that big of a deal. The other thing is this might mess up our atmo sensor here. I might raise this to like 1500 just to make sure we're still only pumping natural gas out of here. This was just to only pump natural gas out if it's at a high enough pressure. Because there's a bunch of other gases in here, I just want to overpressurize so that it does target the natural gas just naturally. You can also filter it if you need to, but I don't want to have to do that if I don't need to, so I'd rather just do it this way. Okay, we are getting up there in quantity of water. Duplicants are building down here. If they leave any material from this point on, you have to treat this material as like it cannot leave this room. If it gets stuck in here or something like that, just leave it alone. The reason that I don't want to do that is because I don't want to be bringing any material that's like thousands of degrees Celsius back into my base and risk them doing something with that I don't want them to. Even just one blob of that can cause a huge problem, so I really would rather not mess around with that if I don't have to. Alright, this video, like I mentioned, is going to be quite long. We'll just let it run. We'll let this one ride out. This will just be a longer one because it's a bigger build. So yeah, just waiting for our duplicants to get there. Let's talk about a couple other things in the meantime while we wait for them to finish it, and we'll come back. So, one other thing that I wanted to mention is you don't necessarily need to keep your reed fibers up. You can stop. You check your quantity here, you should have plenty. So, reed fibers, 328, yeah. Plenty for the rest of the game. You don't need to continue using your polluted water for something like that. So just try to keep a mental log of like all the resources that you're using around the map, and try not to overuse them if you don't have to. So yeah, I did stop my reed fibers. Also, my polluted water that was going into my refinement did run out in the one place, so I just switched it to another. And then I built this, which is a system to separate polluted water from not polluted water. I want the polluted water for my refinement, and anything that's not polluted water I just send over into these other tanks. Really cheap way to filter, and then what you can do is you can put these on automation so that if your last tanks in the chain are ever too full, then it will stop pumping and you won't get any sort of like mix up in there. Should have probably set these to the typical 80-20 that I do. There. Alright, how we doing down here? Almost ready, just pumping out the last little bits of air, getting close to touching the lava here. Your duplicants shouldn't fall in here, they should just stand on the ladder and they should be fine. If they do fall in, you could potentially quickly rescue them by building some ladders or something like that. I don't think I've ever run into that before in this case, so I don't think it's that likely. I think you should be fine. Alright, we're almost entirely vacuumed out here. Now that we're getting close to being vacuumed out, we can start up our aqua tuners. So again, if this is above, let's say 10 Celsius, I want it to be cooled. And we can see this cooling in action. As it goes down the pipe, it's going to come down at 34.5 C, so that's just what it's at right now. It'll go through both of them. It'll go through one and then into the other, and it'll come back out at about 6 degrees Celsius. That is perfectly fine by me. As long as it is not down below its freezing temperature, I'm cool with this. So about 10 C is where I'm going to keep it. That'll just keep this room nice and cool, because with this much heat being generated from the steam, these turbines are going to get really hot. This also may be the most turbines I've ever made before, so I'm not 100% sure if this cooling is going to be enough. I'm pretty sure, and I think we should be good. I also like to overpressurize this, like I mentioned. So I will add in a whole bunch of oxygen here just to get my pressure in here. I did it with the Volcano too, which I don't know if I highlighted, but this is up at about 5.5 kilograms. So, yeah. Alright, we are very, very close. Just a few more tiles and we'll be ready to go. This is almost done being vacuumed out. We're down to our last few micrograms, so we don't necessarily need to have this on anymore. It should just dissipate. I'm going to turn this one off. And I'm just going to get to a point where this like flash boils, and then we can see this stuff working and we'll be done. As soon as the game lets us. There we go. So yeah, if this is above 175, I want it to open. The timer sensor is just set up like this. Have the manual switch. Again, these are all connected by OR gates, so if any of these three are sending a green signal, it'll open the doors. They've stayed open this whole time because I have this switch on. As soon as I turn this switch off, it will periodically open and close to start sharing its temperature. For the first couple, and just for the sake of getting the effect that I want in this video, I'm going to set our red duration to a little bit higher than normal. There's a little bit of liquid copper down here because there was a piece of copper on the ground. Just let it be. It'll fall down into the lava, or it might re-solidify as this starts to cool down. Yeah, don't worry about it too much. Okay, we're in a vacuum in the whole place, which means I'm going to turn both of my pumps off. We probably have enough water now, so I'm going to turn off my water source. And notice how I have it connected to this. I don't want it to back all the way up against the vent. So now I can go back and clean up all these pipes later on. Our pressure in here is looking pretty good. It's just going to continue to grow, but that's fine. All right, let's turn this on. Here we go. Our tiles down here are very hot, 1500 degrees, and it will slowly share its temperature with the water that's up here. It'll look slow, but it'll get out of hand really fast once we get there. So I'm just going to set this red duration for a longer period, and then we can just kind of see the temperature rise until it boils. As soon as it does, I will make sure to set this back off, just so we don't overdo it. We've also got a lot of water in here, which is why it's taking a long time for this to boil, which just makes it generally a little bit more stable. Must have hit that minute. Duplicates are idling heavily. We'll keep them busy in just a bit. Alright, getting pretty close here. Suspense is definitely building. Let's look away for a second. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is setting up a system right here to cool all the material that I want out of this bottom biome before I send it up into my base. Same problem as in here. Oh, starting to boil a little bit. Same problem as in here. If something is super duper hot, I don't want my duplicates taking it into the base and messing things up by overheating everything. So, yeah. Oh, you know what else we need with this? We need one more thing. We probably will want some automation to not have these things running all the time. The steam temperature down here is too low for it, but what we should do before we get started, actually... Let me stop this. Again, you're probably going to make mistakes every once in a while, and that is totally fine. Let's find a better way to do this. Well, whatever. I'll just let it run. But what I'm going to do in the meantime, I will set up a liquid lock to get into here so that I can come back here and maintain it. I don't necessarily want these running all the time. I will only want them running if I actually need the power. So I'm going to connect them up by automation. And I'll just do this off camera so we don't have to wait for me to go back and correct my mistake. I'm going to set them up on automation like this, hook them into a smart battery, the same way that we do with all of our other power in our other room. And I will want that to be used pretty heavily, so I'll set it probably similar to how we're spending our natural gas, this 90-30 setting on the smart battery. So I'll go ahead and do that really quickly, and I'll repair this without letting all my gas get out. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You can see this whole system running. It will produce an incredible amount of power. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. Sorry this was a longer video, but we'll get back to more normal size videos in the next one. Take care, and I'll see you soon.